Hey there, and welcome to the ADK Rock and Metal channel. I, of course, am Dave Does, and with me, of course, is Andy, and we have Kirk as well from Screen Blast Repeat. And today we are doing the first round of what is ADK Top Trump.
ADK Top Trumps. We each pick an album and give it a score, yeah. ADK Top Trumps. From riffs to melody and so much more, yeah. We look at lyrics and hooks and all that stuff. And when we score it, we won't be too rough. We listen to the albums even if they're crap, and fix the score, and that is that. ADK Top Drops. 3 different albums and 3 different scores, yeah. ADK Top Drops. Let's go check out what's in store, yeah. ADK Top Drops. Yeah, we ripped off the American World Police song. ADK Top Drops. Yeah, guess what? You know what the show's called now, huh?
I suppose we should talk about the 3 albums that are in question. So, Andy, as you are the A in the ADK, what was your album pick, and why did you think this was a good album for us to throw in as a top trump?
My pick for this week and the first round of our Top Trump series is Theatre of Tragedies. That's a good start. I've got the bloody title. Velvet Darkness They Fear.
That's the one.
1996 album.
Yes. Why did I pick it? It's a band I've never heard of. I just strolled into HMV in Cambridge. Can't remember exactly when the year was. Probably a few years after it was released. Just flicking through the racks, it jumped out of me because I like the title of the band, the font they used for the song titles on the back, and the song titles itself. I just thought, well, this sounds like gothic doom sort of stuff I would like. Let's take a punt. And it turned out that it is one of my favourite albums of all time. That's why I picked it for the first round of this series.
Okay, and so for my particular pick was Carter USM, the 1992 Love album. Probably around 94, 95, I must have come across this album. It was referenced. Someone said, check this out. There was a couple of songs off of this album which were the more up-tempo ones, but there was also a whole load of other tracks from this particular band that I got into, and it was so different to anything else I was listening to. And again, it just recently came back onto my kind of playlist when I started finding my old CD collections. Driving in the car with my CD player, and I was like, oh, what else are CDs? And I suddenly found this album and threw it back in and remembered how much I enjoyed this particular album, and listening to it from start to finish rather than those Spotify bloody playlists. So it was great to listen to this album from start to finish, and the diversity of this album. So I thought it was, and I also picked it because I knew it would be something that was outside of the natural listening zone for both Kirk and for yourself, Andy. This was not something that you would naturally come across on your own or out of choice. So I wanted to I thought it would be more interesting to do that, but that was my pick. What about you, Kirk?
Yeah, I chose Faith No More album of the year. It came out in 1997. The reason I chose it, I've been working on a documentary called The History of Avant-Garde Metal, and this came up, and it's, to me, in the golden years, this is probably the weakest album in there, but it's got some great singles on it, and it's probably stronger than I remember, because I was listening to it a lot over the last few weeks. It's always been a 7 out of 10 type album to me, but I've really discovered side B again on this album, and perhaps I was a bit harsh in the past. You probably know a couple of songs from this as well, so I was thinking of you two. And with a title like Album of the Year, I knew that would piss you off. So, I was like, I'm going to give it to these two. Tell me what you think. It certainly, to me, is an Album of the Year for 1997, but be interesting to know your thoughts on this.
Okay, well, we're going to go into these. So we're going to do album by album. So, and we're going to do section by section. So it will effectively, the first topic we're going to talk about is the riffage. We're going to give a score for each, from each of us for the album. We'll do Theatre of Tragedies, Velvet Darkness of the Fear. Then we'll do the Carter album. Then we'll do Faith No More, and then we'll come back. We'll start the melody round, and again we'll do each album, and we'll go sequentially. Andy, myself, and then Kirk. So. Theatre of Tragedy, Velvet Darkness, The Fear, Riffage. What was your score out of 100 for this? For your top trump, Andy?
Just want the numbers, or do you want a bit of?
You can put some context if you want to.
Well, first of all, I'll say I don't know how you two approach this project, but I kind of took each track at a time for all the albums we've done, and just sort of noted down a score, and then, you know, as the overall, score for each track. Sorry, I'll say that again. I went through the album and scored riffage for each track as I did for all the categories, and I sort of came out with an average. So, my score for the riffage on my choice of albums was 48. Sort of the overall sort of summary of it. It's not a guitar-led album. Theatre of Tragedy are not a guitar-led album. They're very much sort of keyboards and the sort of dual vocals. The guitar is in effect, you know, a rhythm instrument, and it's sort of, you know, quite low in the mix overall. But it does obviously add to the songs. But you know, what you take away from it, and I'm interested to see what your comments are, is the sort of the keyboard and the piano melodies and the vocal delivery as well. So riffage 48.
So I'm pretty much exactly the same as you on this one. So when I listened to this, I thought some really good, heavy, big chords, doomy chords. But as far as memorable riffage, as far as like something that I would call a hookable riff, there wasn't much on the album. It was very much a backing track behind the beautiful vocal melodies and the keyboard pieces. So I scored it 50 out of 100. Kirk?
Yeah, I scored it 50 out of 100, and I agree with you, Andy. That's not a criticism of Theatre of Tragedy. There's more to this band than just playing distorted guitar riffs. They are standard Death Doom power chords, little in the way of extravagance, but they work well with the keyboards and vocals. Track 7, Black as the Devil Painteth, I thought was quite imaginative because it uses more of a post-punk Susie and the Banshees on the Sisters of Mercy type phrasing. But I did expect to hear more guitar harmonies like the Silent Weep in track number 8. On Whom the Moon Doth Shine. So I wasn't expecting this to be full of flamboyant riffs, and it doesn't need to be this music. So 50 out of 100 for me.
So we move on to Carter USM 1992 Love Album. So same topic. So we talk about riffage. Andy, your thoughts on this?
My average score on this came out at 33. Again, you know, it's not a sort of guitar-based band and not a guitar-based sound. There's sort of electronica in there and sort of, you know, various keyboards and pianos and samples and that kind of thing. But like Theatre of Tragedy, you know, you would sort of project this album and Carter USM's material on sort of latter-day Theatre of Tragedy, the sort of assembly and music albums of that era, where they did go sort of industrial and sort of electronic. Again, it accompanies the music, it supports the tracks, but it's not the forefront, it's not the driving sort of instrument in their sound. So 33.
Yeah, I'm not far different to you on that as well. So I think there are a couple of good tracks on this album which have got some good guitar parts in there, but again, the guitars are just a punk rock aesthetic on those particular tracks. They're kind of chord-based riffage. Versus anything else. It's more really this. There's a lot of hookability in this album and melody and stuff like that, but really, this is not a guitar-based band, and it's not on many of their albums. So I scored it 40 out of 100. Kirk?
I actually scored it 60 because I expanded the meaning beyond guitars. Okay. I'm a big fan of Depeche Mode and artists like that, you know, that use the synth bass.
Yeah,
and even like acid house music that famously uses a technique called the squelch bass. They're doing something similar here, and to me, they're like riffs. I think it is successful, certainly in that single, "The Only Living" by New Cross. But there is actually a chunky metal riff on this album underpinning the song. Suppose You Gave a Funeral and Nobody Came. So that really caught my attention. Yeah. Track number 6, Do Re Mi So Far So Good. To me, that's how rock sounds with a post-punk angle. I thought it was quite refreshing. bit like the Sex Pistols with musical talent, really, isn't it? And track eight, there's a Sex Pistols snarl to it, isn't there?
There's an attitude towards it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just fantastic lyrics, which we'll come on to as well. Track eight, While You Were Out, that contains some rocking guitars and conversant bass lines as well that are kind of speaking to the guitar. So there's more riffs than you think on this, especially if you expand the definition to those synth bass hooks.
Fair enough. We've got to talk about album of the year then. So Riffage, Andy, what are your thoughts on this album?
Faith No More. I know this is one of Kirk's favourite bands, and I'm surprised he, sort of termed it a little on the weak side. I'm surprised how much I enjoyed this and how much metal and how much guitar riffage, as that's what we're talking about, was in this. My sort of overall score is not far behind Theatre of Tragedy at 42. Naked, I've paraphrased the title there. I scored at 70, so that was sort of the sort of most guitar-driven track of, in my opinion. But I got that feeling as well. Got a 70. So they obviously had sort of guitar riffs that sort of sprung to my attention and sort of grabbed my attention. But yeah, I mean, there's a mix because some tracks are sort of predominantly guitar-driven. Others it doesn't feature very much. I mean, Helpless. Had a sort of Stained vibe and a sort of acoustic sort of intro to that and sort of spoken word vocals, but there were overall I was pleasantly surprised at how much guitar and sort of metal elements were in this Faith No More album, which I don't usually sort of spring to mind as being a feature of this particular band. Not that I've heard very much apart from the singles, but yeah, some good guitar riffage in this one. Kirk.
Yeah, so I agree with that. This was a really enjoyable album to listen to from the riff point of view. Lots of very memorable riffs in there. So although not every song is a guitar-led riff fest, when those riffs do come in, they are hooks, they are memorable, and they really do serve the songs really well. So I actually scored this 85 out of 100 for Riffage. Kirk.
So I scored it a 60 because compared to the three albums before it, 1995's King for a Day, 1992's Angel Dust, and 1989's The Real Thing, there's some real chunky thrash metal, extreme metal playing on those albums, even a bit of metallic hardcore on the 95 album. So this album's a bit poppier, and really the guitars never get more than 4 riffs per song on an average Faith No More composition after 1989's The Real Thing. My criticism here, too often John Hudson, who came in to replace Jim Martin, or Trey Spearon, sorry, he uses drawn-in power chords where something more imaginative would be welcome. There's a lot of space in these songs where he could have been far more elaborate. I'm also surprised by the amount of clean guitar strumming on this record. You don't normally hear that in a Faith No More record. But yeah, Naked in Front of the Computer and Ashes to Ashes and the bridge to Your Last Cup of Sorrow, memorable, aren't they, as soon as you hear them, especially that Ashes to Ashes riff. So I would say there are 3 or 4 monumental riffs here. When I say monumental, I don't mean overwhelmingly heavy. I just mean you hear it once and you want to learn it on guitar. So 60 for me for Faith No More.
So for Riffage, it's Faith No More wins that one as a score of 62 out of 100, and Theatre of Tragedy second place at 49. We now go into the next round, which is all around melody. So we're back to Theatre of Tragedy and Velvet Darkness They Fear. So what did you take for melody, Andy?
Well, like I mentioned when we were talking about the guitars, the keyboards and the piano that I can't think of the guy's name off the top of my head, but it sort of delivers is the sort of the lead of the track. Sort of when the vocals aren't in, and also sort of behind the vocals, it's often there. But I was thinking about it and analysing it as we have been for these, and there's not as much elaboration that you think there would be for this sort of style of music. Kirk mentioned about the riffs on the Faith No More album. There's room for more. I think there's room for more sort of melody in the Theatre Tragedy songs and this album in particular. And When He Falleth is piano led with very, very minimal guitars in the background, but that's sort of like the one of the highest scorers for me when it comes to the melody. In fact, it is the highest scorer in that category, and that comes out at sort of 55, which I was surprised at. You know, from
Really? Okay.
From a band that has the keyboard as the driving instrument rather than the guitar, you know, the distorted guitars. So that's just how I sort of broke down each song, maybe because I was thinking that there would be more, or there could be more in the compositions. But
right,
as I said, it doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the album. I think the songs are excellent, but when you critique it like this and really drill down into the you know, the format of the songs, there could be more.
what was your score?
55.
55. We got all there, and I was like, did we have a score?
I don't know if I said it or not, but yeah, 55.
Right, so for me, I really liked the melody. As you say, it's the standout feature. So she's got a beautiful voice, works really well with the piano parts, and it was the kind of standout factor for me listening to this album. It's the one thing that kind of sets it apart from a lot of other female-led bands in that sort of genre. It's just that beautiful melody that she worked with. So I actually scored this 70 out of 100. I really enjoyed that one. Kirk.
Yeah, I scored it even higher. I give it 80. I'll give you my reasons. Of course, the voice, Liv Christine, the singing in track 2, Fair and Geiling, Cope's Mate Death. That reminds me of Kate Bush and her Never Forever era, which I'm a big fan of, 1978, around there. Good use of harmonic minor melodies in track 3 as well, Bring Forth Ye Shadow. And as Andy pointed out, the keyboards and soprano voice provide the melody to contrast with the droning metallic parts. Track number 4, Seraphic Deviltry, and track number 9, The Masquerader and Phoenix, are good examples of that. And did anyone else notice on the song Seraphic Deviltry, Liv Christine, she comes close to the vocal lines of The Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen. I really heard that, and it caught my attention, which is a superb song. I'd say based on melody, this album's closer to My Dying Bride than early Paradise Lost, if you've got to put it in one of the two camps. And often the idea here is the opposite to melody. They want to create a mood of impending danger, which they're very successful at. So put all those factors together, the stunning voice and the very clever use of harmonic minor scales and keyboards, I think they're very successful here. So 80 out of 100.
Cool.
My melody score wasn't based on Liv Christine's vocals, it was purely the music. So if I'd have, I don't know, interpreted the brief differently, that score would have been sort of in the 80s as well, I'd imagine, because as you said, Dave, incredible voice, we know that, and really sets them apart from other bands of this ilk, and which was a very popular genre, in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
So we're on to Carter USM 1992 Love album, same topic, melody. So Andy, what were your thoughts on this?
Again, melody, certainly not from the vocals, so I've actually interpreted it properly in this regard. The electronic elements and the sort of keyboards do give a certain amount of melody, but they all sort of hover around the 30-40 score for me. The high scoring track is While You're Out, which just nudges sort of 50. That's just how I interpret it. That all averages out at 42. I don't think melody is one of the things that the creative parties in this band were sort of thinking about when they're putting the music together. Just to summarise as well, I was surprised how much I enjoyed this. I do know the name, and Dave, perhaps you'll come on to it when you mentioned it. But I don't know what their sort of hit single was, or which one I would know from their catalogue. But I was really surprised how much I enjoyed this album. It was very, very easy to listen to, very easy to sort of review, and very enjoyable. And I was pleasantly surprised again by this one.
So I can't remember which. I mean, they had a couple of bigger hits on later albums, like Glam Rock Cops and stuff like that. Was quite a big one for them. But yeah, there's a couple. I can't remember the ones off the other Jurassic album and stuff like that. There are a few that you might have heard, but I did think that you might enjoy this album because I reference For the Hornets and this band quite often in reference. So
yeah, I can see that.
The attitude of the band, the attitude of what the For the Hornets do and stuff like that. This has a very similar vibe live. So not necessarily musically all the time, but you've got that kind of vibe and a bit of crossover appeal. So I thought For the Hornet sits in naturally with these guys. So with me with melody, it was I kind of looked at it. I had to be careful not that it didn't cross over into hookability too much when I was scoring this, because I was kind of like, there's some great melody hooks in this. So some of these vocal lines, it may not be the most beautiful, but some of the attitude and the vocal delivery and the vocal melodies that he's picked and he's actually chosen really drag you into the song. So that even if the song's not the most amazing track that you ever heard, some of the vocal melodies that he picks are really, really good. He's not the best singer in the world, but for the punk rock attitude, I think he does a great job, and it works really well. So I actually scored this in as a 70 out of 100. Kirk?
Again, I scored this higher. I give it an 80. This is an album that got to #1. And just to pick up, I did my research leading up to it because I knew the name, and I always used to see this album in the bargain basement when you go into shops. Like, this must have been a big artist at the time. And the single, The Only Living Boy in New Cross, I couldn't, when I played it, I was expecting, oh, have I heard this on an advert? I hadn't. So why did I give this such a high score? Because you're right. First of all, the London accent of Jim Morrison, Jim Bob Morrison, is he called that? Does not enhance the melodic sensibilities, but the vocal lines are quirky. The piano and strum guitars have a golden shine to them. This is a band that don't take themselves seriously, but they're very pompous, and they have that in common with Faith No More. Actually, there's some common ground here.
Yeah.
I think they're very ambitious. Some of the arrangements that they're using built around keyboards. There's a song on here that even reminds me of that daytime TV show Going for Gold. They're really soaring melodies with brass instrumentation. So I think that they know what they're doing when it comes to craftsmanship, songwriting. Suppose You Gave Me a Funeral and Nobody Came.
Great.
To me, perfect example how to use keyboard strings and electric piano sequences as the main vehicle for melody in an alternative pop song. So very high, would have been even higher if this vocal approach was different, but it does suit the music, that punk rock style that we've both talked about. So very impressed in that regard.
So we're over to album of the year then. So melody, what did you get for this one, Andy?
The lowest of the three, to be honest, which I think if you was to sort of have a quick snapshot of the three artists, that probably is about right. I mean, there were a couple that I sort of picked out as having sort of more melody than maybe others. The Collision had like a catchy sort of guitar lead, but like you, Dave, my sort of hookability and melody scores are very similar across these three albums. Strip Search was I thought was sort of keyboard led, so had lots of melody. Last Cup had sort of haunting keyboards as well. Naked sort of follow, you can see the connection here. The NERD song, is it called Strippers, where they're all riding on the BMXs? That sounded very, very similar to that, and that had that same sort of melody, that goes on with that track. But Mouth to Mouth reminded me of Epic. That's quite melodic. I was thinking of where those keyboards come from. It sounded like it's like a fairground carnival type of fair. So my overall score for keyboards, those opening sort of 6 tracks were the more melodic ones of the album. My melody score comes out at 38.
Okay. Well, for me, my overall score is 50. And the reason behind that is, when you say Faith No More, I don't think of melody. It's not the word that comes to mind. Angst, angry, quirky, off the wall. All of those things come into my mind. Melody doesn't. And there are a few times where melody does play its part in this album, but it's not as memorable. The guitar riffs were memorable. There's a lot of hookability, and we'll come to that in the next round. Hookability is definitely in there, but melody is not the thing that stood out on this album for me. But there were some nice parts of it, but that's why I've kind of sat in the 50%, because about half the album kind of suits that sort of target, and the rest of it didn't really kind of fit into that sort of benchmark of what I was looking at. But what about you, Kirk?
So I'm looking at it from the perspective of a Faith No More fan compared with other albums, very high. I've given this 90. The trip hop song, Strip Search, track number 2, breaking new ground, that really, for heavy guitar music. I know that it actually does go quite heavy and gothic metal towards the end as well, that song, doesn't it? And it brings in these sweeping keyboard strings. Really love that song. the easy listening song, She Loves Me Not. I mean, I think what this tells you about Faith No More, they're probably the only band that could get away with this, because Andy, you don't see them as a metal band. To me, they're an avant-garde metal band. That's what Faith No More are. And that Angel Dust 1992 album has got songs on there that are, death metal, black metal, so extreme. And you're thinking, how the fuck did this get to #2 in the UK album charts? Because they had good singles, that's why. And then people probably bought the CD and thought, there's a song on here called Jizz Lobber, and it's a fucking death metal song. What the hell? Not the type of thing you'd be playing at a family barbecue. And the chorus to track #5 on this, Helpless, when the dynamics move from clean to distortion. So I'm bringing in a bit of songwriting angle to melody looking at this. I just think Patton's voice is fantastic. I don't think he's really tuned in. He's more interested in his side projects at this time. Same with Roddy Bottom. So there's only really Billy Gould and the drummer, Mike Bowden, holding the band together. And that's why this is ultimately a slightly disappointing album. I think it needed 2 more songs on it to be a true Faith No More classic. But yeah, the melody, I think Billy Gould does a fantastic job here, the main songwriter.
Okay, so for the winner of the melody round, it goes to Theatre of Tragedy with a score of 68, and Carter comes in second at 64. Okay, we are now on to Hookability. And we're back to Theatre of Tragedy. Andy, your thoughts on Hookability?
One of you mentioned you don't think, when you think of Faith No More, you don't think of melody. I think it was you, Dave. Band like Theatre of Tragedy, you don't think of Hookability, in their composition. So their score has come out fairly middling. I mean, there are some sort of hookability aspects to certain tracks. I mean, the closer, the Masquerader, and the Phoenix. I think there's always on Whom the Moon Doth Shine. When Liv speaks delivers a couple of vocal lines towards the end, they are what I anticipate and want to hear her sing, as highlights of the song. So their hookability for me, where she sings after sort of a bit of a reprise in which the light is hidden and kissing the 7 angels of death. I think that when she delivers those lines, they really grab me as parts that I remember from this particular song, and also the album as a whole. But yeah, there's not very many memorable hookability moments, because they're not standard song structures. How they've come up with the way these songs have come together is incredible. We'll talk about the lyrics, in the next round, but the way it's all put together, they're not thinking about hookability in a memorable section. They're just thinking about creating these incredible compositions and really complex songs. So my hookability score overall averages out at 54. With the song that I mentioned earlier as being the highlight in that respect.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's a challenging one with the Theatre of Tragedy, because it's an album where, for me, you can listen to it and just immerse yourself in it, and just go yourself on a journey from start to finish. Just let the vocals and the melody just take you on a journey, and it's wonderful. But I got to the end of the album and I was like, I can't quite remember any of the kind of key points of that album I've just gone. I know I enjoyed it, but I can't tell you what the big hooks were that got me going. So there are moments in lots of different songs. There are like little bits that you go, that's a really cool riff, or that's a nice change, or that's a nice vocal part, and it's got a nice hook to it. But you get to the end of the song, because the songs are so long and so vast, or the album's so long and so vast, that you get to the end of it and you kind of haven't, unless you've made notes, you can't really recall it. It's not something you can just start, like when we talk about Carter USM, I can sing half those songs and the memorable vocal lines. It's a lot harder with this one. So I scored this at 40 out of 100 for that reason. Kirk?
Yeah, I scored this at 50. You're both right. These are long form compositions designed to maximize emotion and place rather than hook you in with a jingle. So you're not going to be walking away from this album whistling any of these songs, and that in no way denigrates the quality of the music. There are some good simple piano sequences though. The main hook in track #6, Der Tanz der Schatten, reminds me, Andy, of The Cry of Mankind by My Dying Bride. You know how they build that song. So yeah, it's not a criticism giving them a 50. It's not about that, this album, is it?
No, not at all. It's not. They're not doing radio chart hits, are they? They're not aiming for that. Now let's talk about Carter USM 1992 Love album, Hookability. Andy, thoughts?
Again, it's not a great score for me regarding the hookability for Carter USM. I mean, what I took away from, you know, the bits that I remember is the sort of the picture of Great Britain in that time that they create with the songs, the attitude, the way it's delivered. You know, it's a real picture of what life was like in this country during where were we, early 90s. So that's what I took away from regarding the hookability aspect. You know, the opener, you know, I think 1993 is sort of like an instrumental track in the main. That was the highest scorer just because of some of the features in that particular track, but they all sort of averaged out at sort of, what did I score at, 42. So you remember a lot of the songs, Dave. You're obviously more familiar and a fan of the album. I didn't take that much away from it in parts that I remember. Not even, you know, thinking about it, The Boy from New Cross, I think, was one of the singles that I remember, and that did seem the most familiar. But I didn't take much away from it without, as you say, sort of creating notes and sort of making a note of what the key aspects of each song was.
I'm on the complete opposite end of you on this one, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
so this is one of the few times where it probably is going to be okay. So I'm going to tell you, I scored this 90 out of 100 for me. And this is one of the few times. So I have to remember when I got this album, there were a few albums, because obviously I knew the album, so I couldn't just judge it on now. Because I could go, oh yeah, but it's so memorable. All those songs are so memorable. And I'm like, well, of course it is, because I've had this album for 20 odd years. So of course it's memorable. Well, of course I can tell you all the lyrics. But I also remember getting the album back in the day and putting it on, and within one or two listens being able to sing all the songs and sing along with it, and having those vocal hooks and those vocal melodies straight in your head. Where, as you say, The Only Living Boy New Cross is Wrestling Fixed. It's such a beautiful track. The Impossible Dream, which is obviously a cover song, but there's so many great tracks on that particular album, and I can't think of a bad track on there that doesn't have some form of hook in there. That because there's a large variety of tracks as well. It's not just straight up punk rock. It's got a lot of different elements, and every song has got something to hook you in. Even if there's not a lot of guitar riffs or something like that, the vocal is the hook in it, and his attitude and the way he puts it. So yeah, I absolutely loved the hooks on this, and it's one of those few times. I have got the other Carter USM albums, and none of them are as hooky as this. They've got good tracks, but they also have very poor tracks, and you can kind of almost go to singles on those ones. Whereas on this album, this is an album that you can just play from start to finish. So yeah, I scored this at 90. But Kirk, what about you?
Yeah, I scored it high. I scored it 80, and what I realised, I'd probably enjoy the music of a band like Blur if it sounded as pompous and yet as self-deprecating as this album. Track number 7, Look Mum No Hands, that's actually the title of a rather vicious joke that used to be told in the school playground from what I remember. But it's an instant classic from the first synth note and upbeat drum formations. I mean, that opening song, 1993, is like ABBA on steroids. And then it turns into, you know, that industrial band KMFDM. That goes in a tangent for them, really dark. And I can also, I've mentioned, I can also hear the melody for the daytime TV show Going for Gold in this song. And what I really enjoyed about listening to this album is putting it in a sense of place, and the John Major's Britain, I guess we call it, weren't we, at the time. But look at the bands. There's a real divide between America and Britain at this time, really, because of grunge, because that makes alternative music a lot heavier, and there's a bit of a resistance over here. So you've got, you know, the Wonder Stuff, even KLF, do you remember them? They're like mixing rock with dance music. Exactly, yeah. And one of the terms thrown at this band was alternative dance and alternative rock. And then this subculture called Grebo, which I'd only learned about today, which was specifically based around Standard
Grebo.
Grebo, sorry.
Yeah, that's the sort of type of person who would listen to a band like Carter USM.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Grebo. So it's associated with Ned's Atomic Dustbin and the Wonder Stuff and artists like that. And they were lumped in with it. And you can see why. Because there is kind of like a crusty punk image to the music as well, isn't there? Yeah, they wear baseball caps and listen to hip hop, so really interesting. But yeah, anyway, this is about the hookability. almost flawless. You know, every song on here has got a hook, hasn't it, Dave? As you said, I just wanted to listen to it again when I played it for the first time today. You know, it's a band I've always been aware of and thought one day I'll probably listen to some of their music. Pleased that I did. So much to discover in this album, and it's great to see that it got to #1 as well.
So, album of the year then, Hookability. Andy, what did you put down for this?
The opening track, Collision, was, you know, my first note was it's surprisingly heavy, and that was quite catchy. I think I mentioned earlier the sort of guitar lead in that was, you know, sort of boosted my melody score for this album. So Collision was quite hooky. Again, the aforementioned Mouth to Mouth, which reminded me of epic sort of rap metal, and the keyboards. That was a hookier track. But later on, we got the feeling, which I sort of described as sort of fast punk, and that was, you know, quite a catchy track as well. And that all averages out at 41.
Okay. So for me, I found, lots of great hooks in this album, and again, lots of variety. So it wasn't just the kind of a straight up just rinse and repeat of different sort of each song, and it just feels like it's just more of the same, like you can get with certain bands. So I liked that there, and it wasn't just it was reliant on guitar hooks. There were some great vocal hook points, and then some songs were guitar led hooks. Some it was just like the drum. There'd be a drum part that would be the hook on that song, and that would stick in there. So for me, 75 out of 100 I gave this one. But what about you, Kirk?
Even though I'm going to give it a high score, it's important I should explain why this is one of the weaker albums in the Faith No More catalogue, because they're just wedded to the verse chorus format in every song other than Strip Search. And to me, you can hear that there's only Bill Gould who's really trying, who's keeping the band together. He's bringing all the ideas, and some of the others are just putting in minimal input, like, yeah, that'll do. And that's just not good enough compared to the standards that they'd set from the 1987 album onwards. But there is still a lot to like. So I give it an 8. I mean, everyone can hum Strip Search. Do. You know, that synthesizer effect. Mike Patton's crooning. You mentioned hooks like drum fills. That easy listening song, She Loves Me Not. It brings in the chorus with a drum fill, doesn't it? Tell me. So you can whistle. There's even a part in that where he's whistling instead of a guitar solo. What does that tell you? I mean, how hookable is that? And then even the heavier stuff, Ashes to Ashes, you know, with that string band, fantastic riff. And I keep saying the contrast between the bridge and the release in the chorus to Your Last Cup of Sorrow, superb, droning chords, and then he plays this weird arpeggio, which actually provides the melody for the vocals. So really strong when it comes to hookability. I wouldn't expect anything less from this band. Same with Mr. Bungle, even though they are absolutely insane and mix Burt Bacharach with grindcore, they always have hooks. And Mr. Bungle with Faith No More with Mike Patton in the band, they're always going to have hooks.
So winner for Hookability goes to Carter USM, with second place going to Faith No More. We are into the final two topics to talk about. So we're now on to lyrics, and we are back to Theatre of Tragedy and Andy.
Well, I think you'll both agree, and anybody who listens to this album will be absolutely, you know, so impressed and amazed by the lyrics, which are written by the male vocalist Raymond Rahonyi, if I'm saying that right. These guys are Norwegian. They're singing tracks in the main in an old English style, for want of a better phrase. I don't know where he gets his information, you know, his sort of inspiration from, whether it's sort of Shakespeare or Wordsworth or Chaucer, you know, those English poets and writers from centuries gone. I mean, Der Tanz der Schatten is German, and there is an English version of that track, and that is in the same style, then translated into German. I don't know how accurate it is. You know, a German speaker will be able to say how good a job they've done, but you know, the lyrics are just so impressive. I mean, the opener, or the first track proper, Fair and Guiding Corpse Make Death, is start to finish lyrical excellence. It's just that is the hookability for me, because I know these lyrics as Liv, Christina, and Raymond, sing them, and then sort of reading them as they're singing them, as I did for studying for this project. It just elevates it even further. So that opening track, I scored 100 for lyrics, because it's start to finish. I mean, they don't use it fully in all the rest of the tracks. There are sort of an interspersed from sort of traditional English lyrics to this old English style. But there was another one, they all score really highly in that, but again, 100 for the German song as well, and that averages out at 80, because the lyrics are incredible. And if you do listen to this album, try and absorb the lyrics as well, because it will elevate your the songs.
Okay, so my score for lyrics on this one was 70, and purely it would have been higher, but one of my biggest bugbears for listening to bands is if I have to get the lyric sheets out, because if I'm listening to a band, I'm like, hang on, what was that they said? I'm not quite sure what that one was, and if I have to refer to a lyric thing, then I'm like, oh, I don't really want to start reading while I'm listening to music. I want to be able to take it on. I want you to suck me in, and I didn't get that all the time with some of the vocal delivery, because obviously if it's in German, I don't understand German. But
is it the style or the words used, Dave, that made you refer to the lyrics?
It's more the style. So when you've got some of the higher parts that she's doing, I was like, hang on, what was that she sang? Hang on, and then you have to get the lyric out and go, hang on, I just need to clarify what that was. And I do find that probably more with some of the sort of, especially sort of Norwegian bands, and when we talk about Swedish bands as well. When we talk about bands like Dark Tranquility and stuff like that, and that's one of my biggest bugbears with growling bands. Because I'm like, well, I have no idea what you're talking about, so I don't enjoy the music at all. Because I'm like, you're going, like, what's wrong with you, mate? I can't hear you. Well, I don't understand what you're talking about. So because of that, I don't enjoy that sort of music at all, because I want to understand what the song's about. And so I was getting into it, and there were just a few points I'm like, because I listened to the album without the lyrics the first time, because I didn't want to pull the lyrics up, and I was like, no, I'm gonna have to pull the lyrics up now just to clarify what they're, just for my own edification, that I actually have got that right, what they're singing about. So, but still a high score of 70% out of 100, because I still thought they were really good. So what about you, Kirk?
Yeah, I scored it 75. I don't think I've got the intellectual capability to really understand them. So I'm a voracious reader of novels and history books, long form, verbose prose. Poetry has never really been my thing. But it's clear these are fantastic lyrics. In Wordsworth, Shelley, all the greats come to mind, don't they? And the fact that they're a Norwegian band and they're able to write in this romantic English from the 18th century is just incredible. I wish I had the talent to write something like this if I ever turned my hat to poetry, which I certainly wouldn't be good enough. And track number 3, there were some stanzas that turned out. There's a song called Bring Forth Your Sorrow, and the lines are, for me the pages of life do not turn low, on the funeral pyre they burn. I thought, oh, that does stand out for me, for capturing a sense of anxiety but also forlorn despair about the future. So magnificent lyrics. My only fear is I don't really understand a lot of them. I just don't have that intellectual dimension.
Okay, Carter, USM. Lyrics. Andy.
I thought the lyrics on this album were very creative. I mean, I mentioned earlier about the songs that sort of create a picture of British life. That was The Boy from New Cross, if I've said that, noted that title down correctly, in England. They are very, paint a great picture. I enjoyed the wrestling ones. Yeah. The lyrics to wrestling, rather, they were quite amusing. Look, Mum, No Hands. I mean, I've just summarised the titles in my notes here. That was sort of portrayed sorrow, grief, and loss to me. And is there an IRA theme?
I was thinking that.
Yeah. Again, that's a bold move if that is the case. I mean, and After the Wasteland mentions David Icke quite a few times. I thought that was quite amusing. So really funny lyrics. Do Re Mi. has a quote that Viv Savage in Spinal Tap says, but I don't think it's a sample from Spinal Tap, so I don't know where that. What was it? Something about have fun all of the time. I can't even remember what it was, but I just remember that. First I heard it was like, oh, that's Spinal Tap, and then is it Ian Jury doing a gloomy monologue at Sky West?
Yeah,
an almost unmistakable voice. It took me a few seconds to sort of recollect who it was. I thought that's got to be Ian Jury. So I thought the lyrics for this really suited the tracks and the attitude and the style of music that Carter are trying to portray. So my lyric score, excuse me, was 60.
Okay, so for me, this as I said, this was an album where I just got the lyrics from listening, not from having to look at a book. So you just, because it's the hookability element. So like, go ahead, you fucking sadist, pucker up and kiss some babies. Great lyric, I love that.
Yeah, no,
so there's a lot of like fuck you to the establishment in these lyrics, but there's also a lot of reflection. Is wrestling fixed is great. It's just that one tagline of in the 80s and 90s, everyone wrestling's fake. So it was almost like that was something. Nowadays we obviously know it's all scripted, but back then there was still that question. So you have all this other stuff being talked about, and then just having that tagline of is wrestling fixed. Just a great little sort of swan on there. So it was almost, for me, I looked at this rather than just like song lyrics, this was almost a poetic young politician kind of fighting against the government and stuff like that, and just putting it out through song. So I scored this as 85. But what about you, Kirk?
Even higher. Fantastic lyrics, 90 for this one. So this reminds me of Neil Tennant from the Pet Shop Boys, who's a great lyricist, but with the mischievous humour of that cult band, Half Man, Half Biscuit, from Birkenhead, the Wirral. John Peel used to love them, didn't it? And then also Paul Heaton from The Beautiful South. So I've referenced three. None of them are rock bands, but great tradition of amusing lyrics, very intelligent. You don't have to be entirely serious. Like the song here, England. I've been GBH'd and ABH for a packet of B&H. I've been taken. I've been driven away. I was fornicating before I could read or write. And now I can't stop, sir. I graduated from the University of Life and the School of Hard Knocks, sir. The fact that they're even poking fun at cliches is just genius in
Very
that.
clever,
and yeah, there were so many times in this album where I was like, did he just say that? So I don't mind having to go back and check, because I was like, I knew what it took. It's like, no one would put that in a pop song, would they? That got into the top 10. And you're right. That one, there is that song where I was thinking, are they talking about someone who's died in an IRA bombing attack? Like you said, themes of grief and sorrow. So this is you could study it on your own, the lyric booklet. And I said about Theatre of Tragedy, I don't have the intellectual dimensions to really appreciate it as much as I should. Whereas with this, I want to go back and read through and underline the lyrics and think, oh my God, how's he created a rhyming couplet out of that? So fantastic. To me, this is the strongest part of the band. No wonder. I imagine NME and Melody Maker will have loved this band, won't they? Because they represented everything that they want. Art school, humour, that Guardian readers and Daily Telegraph readers could appreciate at the time, and the Sun newspaper readers and Daily Mirror. So yeah, really impressive. 90 for me.
So we're on to the album of the year then. So lyrics for this one, Andy.
When Kirk was sort of summarising and making points about this album, he mentioned that many of the members were putting in the bare minimum of effort, and it's only Billy Gould who was kind of trying to drive forward the band and get this album out. I mean, I haven't got much down for lyrics other than they did seem very much of, run-of-the-mill, sort of first draft, anything will do kind of thing. Let's get the song done. So I've scored it 43. They all sort of similar scores. Nothing really stands out for me lyric-wise. It did seem almost, very minimal effort in sort of creating the songs for this, the lyrics for this particular album, which seems a strange way of approaching a musical endeavour. Why do it at all if you're not going to put a decent amount of effort into sort of creating something that other people are going to enjoy? Or I don't know, Kurt, were they just sort of fulfilling a contract obligation to one more album? I don't know, but lyrically, I didn't get much from this album. Certainly not as much as the music.
Very similar for me. So I scored it 55. There were some great lyrics in there at points, but again, it wasn't. I didn't get that raw emotional connection that I did with other songs. So where with Theatre of Tragedy, there was more of a beautiful connection with the lyrics. About it transported me somewhere. With Carter USM, it was the angst and the topical humor. It made me, as you said, we grew up in this time in the UK, and so it was like, yeah, I was there again for that period. With this one, it was, there were elements that I was like, yeah, I kind of see where you're going with this. I quite enjoy what you're talking about there, and then there were others I just didn't connect with at all because it just didn't feel that interesting topically or lyrically. But yeah, 55 for me. What about you, Kirk?
So I'm comparing it to the other Faith No More albums. The lyrics are strong on this, so I've given it a 70, and I'll explain why. Mike Patton very often does like a first-person perspective, and it'll be ambivalent enough where you're thinking, surely he is not alluding to necrophilia here or drowning his girlfriend here, and sometimes he is, and you're like, what the fuck? And it's occasionally interviews that give you the meaning, because that's how ambivalent they are. So the song Ashes to Ashes, I really like the chorus, give it all to you, then I'll be closer, smiling with the mouth of the ocean. There's a song on here, Paths of Glory, that's a famous war film starring Kirk Douglas, classic film. And he seems to be writing from that perspective, the fear of going over the trenches. You don't know, it could be something else. And famously, this band, if I said to you, Dave, what is the song Epic about? You wouldn't know, would you?
No.
I didn't, until I heard Mike Patton give an interview and he said, it's about sexual confusion. I was like, oh, it clicks. Fucking hell, this makes sense now. You need to be told by the band basically what the songs are about, which is going to be a weakness from your point of view. They are sometimes cryptic. Just one more thing I'll say about this band though, on that Angel Dust, that album, there's a song on there mentioned called Jizz Lobber, and that's actually about a man who's sent to prison. Makes sense when you read the
stealing a car.
No, I think it's more about him hiding the dirty minutes under the dirty mattress, which is one of the lyrics. And then there's another song on there called Malpractice, which is about someone who finds sexual pleasure in being operated on by surgeons. You're like, what the fuck is this about? You know, this is a really dark band with a really dark sense of humor, but it doesn't come through as much on here. But yeah, the lyrics are quite good on this. But I'll just address that last thing, Andy. He wasn't fulfilling a contract. They just fucking hated each other, it seems, at this time. The members of Faith No More, they just needed time apart. They're all friends again now. And the press used to have that as the story. The band that famously hate each other. And this was at its height around this time.
Okay, so for lyrics, the winner is Carter USM and Theatre of Tragedy in just behind in second, so 78 and 75. It's the final round. It's all about the emotion. So for us, it was, I guess it was really, I don't really know if we really explained what that should really mean to any of us, but I guess did you have an emotional connection is how I took it. Did you feel something when you listened to an album, or was it just a case of, it's an all right album? Or did you go, fucking hell, I feel this is something. That's how I took it anyway. So I don't know. We'll see how we go on this one, or we'll find out. Andy, how did you take it? Let's talk about Theatre of Tragedy, Velvet Darkness.
Well, when the category emotions was on the list, it wasn't how it made me feel. It was the emotions that come across from the music and the lyrics. If you were to sort of compare it to the other categories, that's how I've interpreted it.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should have had a pre-project.
This is round one. We're working this out.
It's the emotions that the music and sort of lyrics project. And Kirk mentioned with the Theatre of Tragedy lyrics, he hasn't got the sort of intellect to really understand what they're trying to say. And I agree with that. What I take from a lot of because it's sort of, it's Liv, Christine and Raymond almost corresponding with each other. There's lots of back and forth. I mean, the lyrics are on the CD certainly some are plays, in as much as one says a line and one says a response. Some are completely different lyrics sung at the same time. Some are the same lyrics but sung in the different vocal melodies, so that they start and finish at different times, which is really, really clever, I think, and very complicated to do. Morning Beloved for another band that do that with two male vocalists, different styles. But emotions, I think the overriding factor is sort of love between a man and a woman. That's kind of what they're portraying in the lyrics. And the two tracks that I've sort of highlighted as having very high scores in other aspects, Fair and Guiling and On Whom the Moon Doth Shine, are the ones that have that emotion and that emotional projection for me. But across the whole board, I've scored that category at 72 because they are very emotional lyrics. The music as well encapsulates that and projects that out to the listener as well. And it's a very, that is one of the aspects that you could take away from listening to an album, and even this genre of music is it's emotional in quite a dark way as well, even though I think it's sort of portraying love as a sort of primary sort of lyrical content if you was to dive in and sort of break it all down. But it's just beautiful wording as well. But emotions are quite strong. 72.
So I took it a little bit more so from the emotions that the album was trying to put out, but also did I receive those? Did it invoke anything in me? So because they could intentionally go, we're putting out this dark love, and I'm like, well, I'm not feeling that. So
right,
it's obviously not connecting with me. But did it or did it not? So it did in a way. So I felt this to be quite a dark, sorrowful album at times for me. Listening to it, that was the emotion that it naturally did. But what because I wasn't connecting with the lyrics, it was purely the music was connecting that with me. So I was listening to it, and a lot of the time when I listen to music, I'll do it I'll have it in the background while I'm doing something, and I couldn't do that with this album. It changed my mood set, so I didn't find that I could focus on what I was trying to do because this kept making me feel distracted, or I don't know, it was invoking an emotion in me, which was really cool to have, but you have to have it at the right time. I wouldn't want to drive a car listening to this because I think I might crash it, just be like, oh my god. But I did like that. I liked that element, but the vocals for me, or the lyrics, so the vocal melody connected an emotion with me, but the lyrics didn't, if that makes sense. Because sometimes just the tone of someone's voice can make you well up inside because it's such a beautiful melody. But I didn't really, I think I was so focused on the melody, I didn't really connect with the lyrics. But I scored that 60 out of 100. Kirk?
Yeah, I scored this one high, 85. The whole genre is really, it's about maximizing sorrow, melancholia, and bringing that through in the music, which is very difficult to do. It can sound contrived if it's done where the band's going through the emotions. They're not on this one. I love the sensitive soprano voice of Liv Christine. It resonates, doesn't it, with a lonely beauty. The deadpan spoken word of Raymond, more effective than his death metal growls. I really like those. And then there's also a song on here called "And When He Falleth," and it takes a dialogue from Vincent Price from The Mask of the Red Death, which is this film based on an Edgar Allan Poe story. That really enhances the melancholy mood as well. So very impressive. This is the type of music I can just put the headphones on. I don't really need to look at the lyric booklet, a bit like when I listen to post metal. The musical emotion itself is a language, isn't it? And this is one of them where if I was to start listening to it, I wouldn't even bother looking at what the song titles are because I can just listen to all 53 minutes and absorb it. It's immersive, Andy, isn't it, as you said? And that's what I love about this type of music. So 85 for me, very strong.
Okay, Carter, USM, Emotion. Andy?
Well, taking it from the point of what emotions does this album sort of invoke in me, and it's, sort of some of the topics the points we've already sort of spoken about. There's humour throughout. I really enjoyed that, and nostalgia. I think you mentioned that, David. It sort of puts you in that time. I mentioned that it paints a picture of Britain, John Major's Britain, Kirk, in the early 90s. So it's nostalgic, and it's the attitude as well. The things they're talking about. It's almost like, well, just try and enjoy life, make the most of what you've got. So that and the overall emotion, sort of fun. You put all that together, you got a fun, enjoyable album, and that's what I took away from this. I knew the band. I kind of had in my mind what the songs were going to sound like because I could remember some of the hits that they had. The vocals, the vocal delivery, it does sound like very amateurish, something you could put together with your friends who are not even sort of particularly talented. If you was a sort of let's see if we can write a song. This is the sort of thing you come up with The vocal delivery is almost spoken word at times. He's not singing. He's just projecting the lyrics, which are fun and humorous. It certainly creates some emotions and quite positive ones as well. And I scored it 60.
Cool. So for me, I scored this 80 out of 100. And it's one of those albums where if you were to put it on as one of these things, try not to sing along challenges, I would fail every single fucking time for this album. So, and the emotion, because it just makes me happy listening to this album. There are some things that are angst and so forth, but the song is Wrestling Fixed. When everything kicks in, da, 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 am I a HAPPY? I'm in the car. I'm screaming that at the full volume, windows down. I'm bopping from side to side. I think, did Elvis really die? Don't give a shit about anything going on around me. I'm having time of my life. That hardly ever happens with music, and so that's why I always come back to this one. But it's, as you said, the nostalgia element of it as well, and the topics, because it does invoke these memories in your head. You can visualize what the topic, as he's talking, as he's singing these lyrics, these images pop into your head of all these things he's talking about, which don't, when people are talking about an abstract topic, or they're talking about lost love or something, you don't quite visualize it. But in here, you can clearly visualize what they're talking about. When they talk about Elvis really died, did Little Red Riding wear a hood? You're seeing Little Red Riding, you're seeing Elvis in your head, you're seeing all that, and it invokes these images. So that's why, for me, it's a high score of 80. But what about you, Kirk?
Yeah, I should say at this stage, my idea of emotion in music gravitates towards the sorrowful and introspective. Whether that's The Cure or listening to a band like Cult of Luna, or even black metal, the few artists that I do like in that genre. It's very much despair or a forlorn burden that you're carrying. And I've completely forgot that emotion can include joy, an ode to joy. So I've probably...
We do the ADK channel. There is no joy.
But when we listen to rock and metal, we don't, that hardly any of that's joyful music. So I've probably given it a lower score. I've given it 50. Because the main emphasis here is on a cryptic sense of humor, and I love the lyrics. But there is a genuine pathos in that song, Sky West and Crooked, the one with Ian Dury, Andy. And the last track is a cover, isn't it, of the song written for the 1965 Broadway musical Man of La Mancha about Don Quixote. So I think this is something I'd get more out of it on repeat listens, where I'd be like, oh, this is darker than I thought on first listen. But again, it's because I'm hardwired to just gravitate towards art that is bleak or dark or really sinister. And I sometimes forget about the wonders of joy. So 50 for me.
Okay, final one. So emotion for album of the year, Andy.
Again, if we sort of taken, what we discussed about what the emotion category means, not a lot, to be honest. What Kirk said about this album being going through the motions is making more and more sense the more we discuss it and the more we talk about each category. I mean, the most emotional part that I took from certain songs is that Mike Patton's vocal delivery reminded me of Nick Holmes from Paradise Lost. Not necessarily the sort of the first 5 albums or so that I enjoy, but perhaps the later... the mid period of Paradise Lost, 1 Second and Host, and all, those sort of Paradise Lost songs, and the way Nick Holmes delivered the vocals from the few songs I've heard from that period. But that's what sprung to mind to me, and is probably the most emotional aspect I can take from the songs from the album. There is some humour in some of the tracks. There is some sort of sort of darker and more sort of sorrowful, emotional aspects as well. Helpless, for example, which I mentioned earlier, gave me sort of a bit of a, reminded me of Stain a little bit. Got the feeling it is a bit more positive and upbeat because it's got that sort of UK punk vibe for me. But the overall sort of emotion score is 53.
Okay, so for me, the overall score is 60. There are some dark points in there which don't do like Ashes to Ashes. I mean, you feel the pain, and it is very much Mike's vocal delivery that kind of gives you the angst. But it's very, for me, this album was very, I would like to say, it felt tortured. It felt like a tortured album. It didn't feel like a pleasant experience from the band delivering it.
Exactly.
So it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. This didn't feel like a band that was enjoying themselves putting this album out, and it came across in the music. So there was some really cool guitar riffs and stuff. But when you start putting some of the vocal stuff over the top of it, you're like, that didn't feel like you almost wanted to be in the room doing that at the same time. You're almost like, fuck you, I'll do these lyrics then. Fuck you. There you go. That's it. That's what you're having. And I'm like, all right, okay, it kind of works, but I'm not sure if it was the emotion I wanted out of it. But there were some great tracks on it. So, yeah, I've given it a 60. But what about you, Kirk? Final
I've
score.
given it a 60. It's very hard. I think I need to ask a question. Why do I listen to Faith No More? And I'm not listening to that to deliver a life-changing experience in terms of I've just had an epiphany. I'm listening to that thinking, surely they can't keep surprising me, or why the hell have they combined that with that? That's genius. No band has ever done that before. How have you managed to combine Slayer with, easy listening music on this song? And that's what is wonderful to me about Faith No More. There is a humor in there as well. It's very dark, isn't it? But you don't know how dark. At times you're like, surely they don't mean that, and often they do. What surprises me about this album, this is why I like side B again now. I always used to write it off. The last two tracks basically are just gothic metal, aren't they? You're right, Andy. Like Nick Holmes is delivering this baritone gothic voice. That song, Paths of Glory, and then even at the beginning, like the throat sounds that he's making for that last song, Pristine, it's quite got a warmth to it somehow as well. But yeah, Dave, as you said, you wonder if the other band members looked at each other and thought, "Oh, why has he done the vocals like that? Should we just leave it?" And they probably did, but it works. It is quite edgy. It's not an edgy album compared to the other three, but 60 on this. There are some genuine beautiful moments from Faith No More on the 1989 song, The Real Thing. There's a song at the end called The Edge of the World. You think, oh, this is a pretty song. And then you look at the lyrics, you're like, fucking hell, this song's about paedophilia. You're like, why are you writing a pop song about that? So, very extreme at times, this band, if you look more into it. And I think their own country in America, I think they just didn't get it in the end. They were bigger in Germany and the UK and Australia and Latin America for the last three albums. There were still superstars in those countries, whereas in the United States, new metal had come about. They'd influenced all those bands. Andy, you mentioned Stained. No doubt Aaron Lewis will be influenced by mid-90s Faith No More as much as he's influenced by Korn and Deftones. So, yeah, I understand that reference.
So for the winner of the emotion round, it goes to Theatre of Tragedy, who won that round with a score of 72, and we're clear winners on that one, well ahead of every of the other two bands. So we have a final score, and so which is our top trump winner of this week?
Ooh.
So our top trump is Carter USM 1992 Love Album with an overall score of 64. In second place is Theatre of Tragedy's Velvet Darkness with a score of 63 overall. 1 point. And Faith No More Album of the Year came in at 60. So not much in all of the albums overall. So well done to Carter USM 1992. And we now should really talk about round two, where we don't know what albums we have picked. So Andy, what album are you throwing into the hat for top trumps for the next round?
I am throwing in the legendary debut album from American thrash band Metal Church, album called The Dark.
Looking forward to that. I've never listened to their music. I know of them, so good choice.
I've never heard them. Ever. I know of them again.
Give me a reason to listen to a band that I never got around to. Thanks, Andy.
Isn't it the guitarist John Marshall? Didn't he fill in for Metallica?
Yeah, when Hetfield
did his arm, he was a guitar tech for them, if I remember right.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
They were friends, weren't they, with Metallica? I think they supported him on the Master of Puppets tour.
Okay, so for my pick, I am going to give you Drain STH and their debut album, Horror Wrestling.
Cool.
Kirk, what have we got? Now, I'm going to guess. Is it Dillinger Escape?
It is. But I didn't tell you which album. So my pick is the 2004 album by the Dillinger Escape Plan called Miss Machine.
Okay, well, we've got our work cut out, so we are going to go away and listen to those albums and come back for round 2. So please join us for that and let us know in the comments what you think of those 3 picks. And do you think we scored these albums correctly on these top trumps for the round 1? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you on the video sometime very soon. Take care.